You know, usually when we talk about power, we instantly default to this very visual, almost cinematic imagery.
Right, absolutely.
I mean, you picture the ruthless corporate boardroom, the CEO pounding their fist on a mahogany table, or we think of these rigid political hierarchies like generals moving pieces on a massive map.
Yeah, because we are so conditioned to see power as volume. We see it as physical force. It's loud, it's aggressive, and it is highly visible.
Totally.
We basically track who is doing the most, speaking the loudest and taking up the most space.
Exactly. We view power as a sledgehammer, but then you encounter a text that completely shatters that visual, and you realize that the most potent forms of power, the ones that actually run the world, they don't look like a sledgehammer at all.
No, not even a little bit.
They look like invisible strings.
And learning to see those strings,
Yeah.
and more importantly, how to actually pull them, it requires a complete paradigm shift.
Yeah.
I mean, it requires abandoning this idea that influence is simply a mathematical equation of who exerts the most force.
So that is our mission for you today. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are opening up a blueprint that is custom tailored for you, especially if you're the kind of person who wants to understand the hidden dynamics of the world, to be thoroughly well informed
Right.
and to gain practical leverage without having to drown in dense, impenetrable academic theory. We are looking at a truly fascinating, somewhat enigmatic book by R.G.H. Sue called The Craft of Power.
It is a remarkable text. It really is.
Mhm.
It doesn't just offer standard tips on management or leadership like you'd find in an airport bookstore.
Yeah.
It attempts to construct an entirely new way of moving through the world. It's almost like an operating system for human dynamics.
And the key to that new operating system is right there in the book's subtitle, which is The Fusion of Eastern Mysticism and Western Pragmatism, a philosophical and strategic guide to the uses of power.
It's quite a promise. I mean, fusing mysticism and pragmatism sounds almost like an oxymoron at first glance.
It really does. They seem like completely opposing worldviews.
Yeah, they do.
It sounds like trying to mix oil and water. Sia is basically asking us to balance invisible, almost ethereal intuition with cold, hard logic.
Exactly.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Let's actually look at what that means on the ground. Before we get to the strategy of using this power, we need to understand the raw materials. How exactly are we defining Western pragmatism and Eastern mysticism in this context?
Well, let's start with Western pragmatism because for most of us in the modern world, this is the water we swim in.
Right.
In the Western tradition, power is treated as a tangible tool. It's a physical object you hold and wield. It's highly structural,
Okay, so it's concrete.
very concrete.
Hmm.
Western pragmatism is obsessed with direct action, with measurable results, clear hierarchies, and utilitarian logic.
So it's essentially the modern corporate structure. You have KPIs, you have quarterly earnings, rigid chains of command.
Precisely. If there is a problem, the Western pragmatic approach is to attack it directly. You build a structure, you apply force, and you conquer the obstacle.
Like a battering ram.
Exactly. It is highly linear. A leads to B leads to C. You have a goal, you draw a straight line to it, and you bulldoze anything in the way.
Right.
And to be fair, it's highly effective for building infrastructure, for industrialization, and rapid scaling.
But it also sounds incredibly rigid. I mean, if you're always bulldozing, you're creating a massive amount of friction.
You're constantly fighting against whatever's in front of you. Now, contrast that with Eastern mysticism. In the Eastern philosophical tradition, drawing heavily on traditions like Taoism power, it's not a tool you pick up.
Wait, it's not a tool.
No, power is a fluid environment you inhabit.
A fluid environment. Oh, wow. That changes the metric entirely. It's not something you own. It's something you navigate.
Completely. Eastern mysticism focuses on unseen forces. It cares deeply about timing, about context, and about adapting to the natural flow of things rather than fighting it.
Hmm.
One of the core concepts here is wu-wei, which translates roughly to non-action or effortless action.
Hmm.
Now, crucially, that does not mean doing nothing.
Right. It's not just, sitting on a mountaintop meditating while the world just passes by.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It means acting in perfect harmony with the circumstances so that your action leaves almost no trace. You aren't forcing the environment to bend to your will.
You're aligning your will with the environment's natural momentum.
Yes, exactly.
So, okay, it's like trying to control a river. The Western mind immediately wants to build a massive concrete dam, right?
Yes. You engineer a massive structure, you pour millions of tons of concrete, and you physically block the water through sheer structural integrity and force.
And you are just in a constant state of fighting the water's natural pressure, whereas the Eastern approach would be, what, digging a channel?
Exactly. You sit on the bank, you observe the water's natural flow, you understand where the current naturally wants to go,
Right.
and then you carve a gentle channel upstream to softly divert it. The dam is brute force. The channel is leverage.
But C doesn't want us to just pick the channel, does he? He's talking about a fusion of both.
And what's fascinating here is that this is the genius of the book. Sue doesn't say West is bad, East is good.
Right.
He argues that true, sustainable, long-lasting power requires both. If you only have Western pragmatism, you build the dam. But because you ignored the invisible, shifting realities of the water table, the changing seasons, the underlying current.
The pressure just builds up and the dam bursts.
Exactly. And we see this all the time in business.
Oh, like the launch of New Coke in the 1980s.
That is a perfect historical example.
Yeah.
The Western pragmatic metrics, the blind case test, the data, the rigid logic, all said New Coke was a better product.
So they just used massive corporate force to push it into the market.
Right, they bulldozed. But they completely ignored the Eastern environmental side of the equation. They missed the invisible emotional cultural connection consumers had to the original brand.
Wow, yeah. The environment rebelled and the concrete dam just shattered.
It did. But on the flip side, if you only rely on Eastern mysticism, you might understand that cultural river perfectly. But if a competitor launches a massive, aggressive campaign, a flash flood, if you will.
Your gentle little channel isn't going to save your market share.
Exactly. You need the structural integrity and decisive action of the dam, combined with the deep, intuitive understanding of the water. You need the concrete and the current.
Which moves us into the first real challenge of this book, the philosophical guide portion of his subtitle. And I have to push back hard here because when I hear the words mysticism and power put together, my mind immediately goes to, manipulation.
Sure, that's a common reaction.
I mean, I picture a Machiavellian figure operating in the shadows, playing mind games, or some charismatic cult leader. How is this actually a practical philosophy for a normal person trying to navigate their career without becoming a sociopath?
It's a vital question, and it's the exact reason people misunderstand this text. To grasp C's philosophy, you have to look at how he defines power at its absolute baseline.
Yeah.
C treats power as an amoral, primitive essence.
Immoral, meaning devoid of morality altogether. Not good, not evil, just existing.
Correct. Think of power like electricity or gravity. Gravity isn't good or evil. It just is.
Right.
Electricity can heat a hospital incubator, or it can be used in an electric chair. The current itself is entirely neutral. The morality comes entirely from the wielder.
I see.
So when C talks about the mystical aspect of wielding this amoral force, he isn't talking about casting spells or engaging in psychological warfare. He's talking about attaining a state of profound internal stillness.
Stillness as a strategy for handling electricity.
Yes. The mystic side of this fusion is about training your mind to see reality exactly as it is. Not as you wish it was, not as you fear it might be, but exactly as it is.
And I'm guessing the biggest obstacle to seeing reality clearly is the human ego.
Oh, absolutely. Our pride, our insecurities,
Yeah.
our need to be right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, if you are operating purely from a Western pragmatic standpoint, but your ego is involved, you are going to make catastrophic mistakes.
Because you're taking it personally.
Exactly. You will double down on a terrible financial investment because you don't want to look foolish to your board. You will lash out at an employee because your personal pride was hurt rather than addressing the actual operational issue. Your vision is clouded by you.
But it sounds profound in theory, and yet, practically, how do you just become a nobody when your job literally requires you to be the face of a company? I mean, if I'm a CEO or even just a project manager, I have to have an ego to have the ambition to lead, don't I?
You have to have drive, sure, but you do not need to attach your identity to the outcome. Sue distinguishes between the role you play and the core of who you are.
Okay, that makes sense.
The mysticism is about mastering yourself so you don't manipulate others out of insecurity. If you can maintain internal stillness, you aren't clouded by emotion. This allows you to make ruthlessly effective, clear-eyed decisions.
It's the difference between trying to be the electricity and just being the wire.
That is a crucial distinction. Look at the history of massive corporate failures. Look at the Time Warner and AOL merger in the early 2000s.
Oh, right.
It is widely considered one of the worst mergers in history. Why did it happen? not because the math made sense, but because of massive executive egos.
They wanted to be the biggest.
Exactly. They wanted to be the most revolutionary. They attached their personal identity to the size of the deal, ignoring the reality of the clashing company cultures and the actual technological landscape.
They believed their own hype. They thought they were the power.
And it destroyed immense value. C's philosophy is about deliberately detaching that ego. You cultivate an inner emptiness, a mystical void, so that you can wield immense pragmatic power effectively without it consuming you from the inside out.
And without you destroying the system to feed your own vanity.
Precisely.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Because if detachment is the ultimate goal, how does this philosophy survive actual contact with a high-stakes situation?
Let's get into it.
Let's move to the second half of C's promise, the strategic guide to the uses of power. This raises an entirely new level of strategy that I found fascinating. What does fusing the East and West look like when you are actually in the room negotiating or managing a crisis?
To see the fusion strategy in action, we first have to look at how both sides fail when they are isolated in a high-stakes environment. The classic Western strategic flaw is overaction.
Meaning just doing too much.
Yes, it's a bias toward doing something, anything, rather than nothing. When a crisis hits, the Western mindset is to immediately start swinging the sword.
It's the manager who panics and sends like 50 emails in an hour, calls 3 emergency meetings, and pivots the whole strategy just to prove they are actively managing the crisis.
Exactly. It's action for the sake of alleviating anxiety. It exhausts resources, it creates unnecessary enemies, and it generates massive friction.
Right.
Now, the Eastern strategic flaw, when isolated, can be fatalism. It's an over-reliance on the flow.
The idea that, the universe will work it out.
Right. It's sitting back and observing the flow of the market while your competitor steals all your clients. Just letting things happen to you isn't power, it's passivity.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We saw this with legacy companies like Blockbuster. They observed this shift toward digital, but they trusted their established dominance and flow too much. They didn't take decisive, pragmatic action, and they were wiped out.
So the strategy is threading the needle between panic and passivity. But wait, if I just sit around observing the office politics like a mystic, isn't someone else just gonna, take the promotion?
Patience in this context isn't inactivity, it's intelligence gathering.
Oh.
The fusion strategy means you adopt the Eastern mindset of infinite patience first. You step into the chaotic boardroom, and you do not speak first. You watch the currents of the office politics. You observe who is actually making the decisions versus who is just talking loudly.
You practice wu-wei.
Exactly. You wait until the absolute perfect moment presents itself, the moment of maximum leverage.
And then when that moment arrives.
In that exact fraction of a second, you strike with total, efficient Western pragmatism. You apply the exact right amount of force with zero hesitation to achieve a measurable result. You don't argue for an hour. You deliver one undeniable piece of data when the room is finally quiet and receptive.
It's exactly like an acupuncturist.
How so?
Well, if I go to a doctor for severe back pain and they come at me with a sledgehammer, that would be purely pragmatic, incredibly forceful, and obviously destructive.
It would certainly address the pain by causing entirely new problems.
Right. But the acupuncturist reads the body first. They study the flow, they look for the specific energy meridian, that's the intelligence gathering, the mysticism side. They wait, they observe.
This raises an important question, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because after they observe, they then use the tangible tool of the West, the physical needle, but they place it in the exact right millimeter of skin and fundamentally change the whole biological system with minimal effort. How often do we swing a sledgehammer when a needle would do?
Exactly. But let's ground this. Walk me through a micro scenario. Let's say you're a manager and you have a senior designer on your team who is severely underperforming, missing deadlines, and constantly defensive. How does the sledgehammer approach look versus the fused approach?
Okay, great example. The purely Western pragmatic approach, the sledgehammer, is direct confrontation. You call them into an office, you present a spreadsheet of their missed deadlines,
That's familiar.
you put them on a performance improvement plan, you apply hierarchical force to demand compliance.
And the result is usually that they get more defensive, morale plummets, and they start looking for another job. I mean, you might get short-term compliance, but you've damaged the machine.
Exactly. Now let's apply sauce fusion. First, you use Eastern mysticism to observe. You detach your ego. You don't get angry that they are making your team look bad. You simply watch.
You're gathering intelligence.
Right. And you realize, through careful observation of team dynamics, that this senior designer is feeling threatened by a new, younger hire who is faster with the new design software.
Ah, so the missed deadlines aren't laziness.
They are a symptom of insecurity and technological overwhelm.
You've mapped the currents of the river. You know where the blockage actually is.
Now, you apply the Western needle. You don't have a massive confrontation. Instead, you hold a brief meeting and ask that senior designer to mentor the younger hire on high-level brand strategy, while having the younger hire assist them with the new software execution.
Oh, wow. You solve the productivity issue, you validate the senior designer's experience, and you upskill them on the software, all without a single shot being fired.
That is the fusion. You achieve the rigid, pragmatic goal, getting the team's productivity back on track, but you use a highly intuitive, fluid, almost invisible method to get there.
That's brilliant.
The master of C's craft doesn't care about the performative aspect of power. They don't need the rest of the office to see them swinging the hammer to know they are in charge. They are perfectly content to be invisible, to place the needle quietly and watch the system realign itself.
So what does this all mean? For you, the listener, you might be commuting right now or prepping for a standard Tuesday morning meeting. Not all of us are CEOs or emperors or generals maneuvering armies. How can you actively apply this fusion to your own daily life, your own negotiations, or just your personal growth?
Well, the beauty of CU's framework is its absolute scalability. It applies just as much to a family dispute as it does to a corporate merger. You can apply it today.
Okay, where do we start?
It starts with a simple division of your mindset. You must be entirely pragmatic about your end goals.
Meaning, know exactly what you want the outcome to be.
Yes. Be Western in your objectives. You want a promotion. You want your child to finish their homework without a screaming match. You want to get a stubborn client to sign off on a proposal, have a clear, measurable outcome. But, and this is the crucial part, you must be mystical about your methods to achieve them.
So be rigid about the destination, but entirely fluid about the journey.
Exactly. Being mystical about your methods means walking into a room and reading the unspoken dynamics. If you are trying to convince a stubborn client and they push back, the Western pragmatic instinct is to argue.
Right, to bring more data, to force them to agree.
The fused instinct is to pause. Do not force the issue. Yield momentarily.
Find the current of their river. Figure out why they are pushing back.
Exactly. Maybe they are facing budget cuts they haven't disclosed. Maybe their boss is breathing down their neck. Once you intuitively understand the invisible forces acting upon them, you can apply the needle.
Right.
A gentle nudge of influence, perhaps adjusting the payment schedule to alleviate their hidden budget fear, will secure the signature instantly, whereas arguing about the data would have killed the deal.
It's about recognizing that the shortest distance between 2 points isn't always a straight line. Sometimes a straight line takes you right into a brick wall.
Yes, exactly.
Sometimes you have to navigate the topography. It reminds me of the ancient concept that water is the softest thing in the world, but over time it can carve through solid rock.
Because water doesn't argue with the rock. It doesn't get frustrated that the rock is in the way. It just finds the path of least resistance around it. And through relentless fluid movement, it eventually wins.
Wow.
You have the pragmatic goal of getting past the rock, but you use the mystical method of yielding and flowing to achieve it.
It really is a complete re-education on what it means to be effective in the world. It strips away all the bluster, the noise, and the posturing that we usually associate with ambition and influence.
It demands a higher level of psychological maturity. It demands that you tame your own mind and your own ego before you ever try to bend the world to your will.
So let's quickly recap the journey we've taken today through Seize the Craft of Power. We started by defining the fundamental difference between the structured, forceful, metric-driven nature of Western pragmatism and the fluid, intuitive, timing-based nature of Eastern mysticism.
Right.
We explored the concept of controlling the river, the brute force of the concrete dam versus the leverage of the gentle channel.
We then looked at the philosophy required to fuse them, understanding that power itself is an amoral, neutral force, much like electricity.
Yeah.
The danger isn't power itself, but the human ego attached to it. True effectiveness requires a mystical stillness and emptiness of ego, so you can see reality clearly and avoid the trap of your own pride causing collateral damage.
And finally, we uncovered the actual mechanics of this strategy. It's the acupuncturist approach. It's avoiding the fatalism of doing nothing while simultaneously avoiding the exhaustion of constantly swinging the sledgehammer.
Exactly.
It is waiting with infinite observant patience for the exact right moment and then acting with decisive pragmatic precision, using the smallest possible needle to enact the greatest possible change.
It is a lifelong practice. You will fail, and you will find yourself swinging the hammer from time to time. But even a small shift toward this framework can dramatically reduce the friction in your daily life.
Absolutely. Well, this has been an incredibly eye-opening session. But before we go, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final lingering question to mull over as you go about your day. Something that pushes just a bit past the strategy we've discussed.
That's here.
We've talked entirely about how this fusion changes the way you interact with the world and how it makes you more effective. But think about the internal costs or perhaps the internal evolution of doing this for decades. If you truly master this fusion, if you learn to wield power with the cold, measurable efficiency of the West, combined with the deep, invisible intuition of the East, and you constantly detach your own ego to remain a perfect, objective conduit for that energy, do you fundamentally change the nature of power, or does wielding that much influence in absolute stillness fundamentally change you? Keep questioning the forces around you, keep looking for those invisible strings, and we will see you on the next deep dive.